A very good morning and many thanks for joining us on another edition of Political Spectrum. It's live on Spectrum Television. I am Raymond Ita. It's the 8th day of May and inadvertently the second week in the lead up to the penultimate days or the penultimate days in the month power from President Muhammadu Buhari. The countdown, of course, continues to what is, in the hopes of most Nigerians, going to be a seamless transfer of power. But today is also the commencement of the pre-hearing by the Presidential Elections Petitions Tribunal, which is sitting in Abuja, where all of the petitions brought before will be entertained, but a special focus would be on what happens in the Presidential Elections Petition Tribunal, with a pre-hearing expected to start up today, seeing the PDP and the candidate of the party, Atiku Abubakar, demand for a live broadcast of the entire court proceedings as far as it concerns the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal. It's left to be seen if the court will grant the prayer of governmental organizations. We've all requested for the process to be televised so Nigerians could be up to speed in real time with the court processes. So the judiciary processes around election litigations are free and fair. We'll talk about all of these issues as we progress later, but let's turn our sights now to the day's biggest political news stories and events. And we begin with the socio-economic right, billion naira double pay and life pensions from former governors who are serving as lawmakers and ministers. Now, Serap disclosed this in a statement by its Deputy Director, Kolawole Oluwadare, recalling how Justice Oguntoyinbo of the Federal High Court in Lagos had ordered the federal government in November 2019 to recover life pensions collected by former governors who are now serving as ministers and members of the National Assembly. Justice Oguntoyinbo also laws permitting former governors and other ex-public officials to collect such pensions. Now, the rights groups regretted that the government of President Muhammadu Buhari has failed to implement the judgment. Justice Oguntoyinbo, who retired from the bench. Elsewhere, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has raised an alarm over an alleged plot by the All Progressives Congress, APC, to influence the outcome of petitions currently pending before the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. But the PDP also alerted, speaking out against the APC's planned moves to install a government that does not enjoy the mandate of the majority of Nigerians. In a press conference in Abuja yesterday, presided over by the National Nigerians and democratic institutions, including the judiciary, arose from the APC's apprehensions given the weight of evidence against it, as well as the continued refusal by a majority of Nigerians to accept the outcome of the flawed presidential election. Well, it said more alarming were the allegations in the public space of attempt by certain APC leaders to compromise the compromise the judiciary with a heavy financial inducement and also orchestrate what they call trumped-up allegations of impropriety against judicial officers. But the PDP called on the APC and its leaders to come clean and address Nigerians and the world on the disturbing allegations and revelations which they say are already in public domain. Of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar, has filed an application requesting a live telecast of proceedings at the appellate court, where the former vice president will go head-to-head with the president-elect and the APC standard-bearer, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to challenge his mandate. Now, the motion brought before the court by the legal representatives of Atiku, led by Chris Uche's son, had applied for an order directing the court registry and the parties on the modalities for admission of media practitioners and their equipment into the courtroom. On why they were applying for the live coverage, Atiku noted that the applications before the tribunal is a matter of national interest and should be participation in the tribunal as it concerns them more as significant stakeholders of the election. Meanwhile, the legal team of the PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar has also appealed to the Presidential Elections Petitions Tribunal to withdraw Tinubu's certificate of return, noting that it contravened the statutory provision of the Electoral Act of 2022. Now, Tinubu's legal team, on the other hand, had since countered the application, notifying the court that the PDP's application lacked legal competence. Over to concerns in the legislative Senate President's seat. The development was confirmed yesterday after a resolution was reached from the Northwest Bloc to adopt Senator Barau Jibrin as Akpabio's deputy. Now, to further solidify these assertions, top political heavyweights like Governor Devamai of Ebonyi State had earlier stepped down his bid for the Senate presidency to declare his support for Akpabio openly. But similarly, Senator Arlene Dume of Borno South Senatorial District publicly relinquished his bid and admitted that Akpabio was in pole position for the coveted seat at the upper chamber of the National Assembly. Now, recall that Governor Abdullahi Ganduje, at an event in Cross River State, had revealed that Senator. Meanwhile, the National Working Committee of the APC will meet today to ratify the zones where the leadership positions in the 10th National Assembly will come from. It is expected that the ruling party will produce the Senate President, the Deputy Senate President, the House of Representatives Speaker, and the Deputy Speaker as a result of its majority in both chambers of the National Assembly. Now, the crucial meeting is expected to ratify the zoning arrangement and a plan to have a consensus around the choice of candidates. In an interview with newsmen yesterday, the APC National Publicity Secretary Felix Morka confirmed that the meeting will take place at the party's headquarters. Morka, who refused to make available the agenda, said the meeting will take critical decisions regarding some issues facing the party. When asked if the zoning of the National Assembly leadership is slated for deliberations, Morka simply said the issue may be discussed. Those are the major updates to make do with this morning, but stick around when we come back from this break. The wider deliberations on political spectrum this morning will focus keenly on the expected transition of power from President Buhari to President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the face of the decision of the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal to formally fix today, Monday, May 8, 2023, for commencement this morning, as the PDP have demanded for a live telecast of the proceedings. Plus, is Senator Godswill Akpabio inching one step closer to a Senate presidency? We'll find out when we come back. Do stay with us. Political Spectrum will return.
But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television.
Cross them. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those attempted murder of Hebrew?
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every Friday.
Welcome back, and many thanks indeed for staying with us. You're watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum Television. As always, don't forget you can connect with us on StarTimes DTH Channel 421, and for live feeds, simply head to our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. We encourage you to subscribe and follow us on all of our socials, where you can catch up with anything that you may have missed on our daily content. Well, we'll do well to give you an opportunity to be a part of the conversation today as well by reaching out to us on the numbers that would be displayed on the screen later on, where we'll be gauging your reactions to the scheming and the lobbying in the race for the position of the coveted Senate presidency, which elect is due for later this month, with Senator Akpabio appearing to be the name on the lips of many, garnering endorsements left, right, center, the latest of which has come from the backing of over 65 senators who have, of course, endorsed his candidacy for the Senate presidency. We'll touch on that later. But the Elections Petition Tribunal, whose much anticipated sitting is expected to commence later today, Monday, May 8. Now, the presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, as well as the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, are both expected to be at loggerheads to challenge the emergence of the All Progressives Congress, APC, and its presidential candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in the recently conducted and concluded February 25 presidential elections, which of course saw INEC declare Bola Tinubu as president-elect. Well, following that results, Tinubu garnered, according to INEC, around 8,794,726 votes to be declared the winner, while his counterpart in the PDP and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar came behind with a total number of 6,984,520 votes, while the Labour Party candidate Peter Obi finished third with around 6,101,533 votes. However, both Atiku and Obi commission, that INEC, as well as the president-elect Tinubu, one of the legal attorneys for Tinubu disclosed that today's hearing would be for the official commencement of the tribunal, which will include the presentation of witnesses, as well as admitting documents and the like. And he also described it as a pre-trial. This is some excerpts from his comments with this regard. He said the only thing they will do is to schedule the hearing. Maybe for those who had been anticipating the commencement of this trial, nothing is expected to be given away just yet, because it's the first day, it's still early days, no formal pronouncements, just to get a in-house modalities of how the entire proceedings would go on at the PT is what is expected to be on the front burner today, as was kindly, of course, explained by one of the attorneys for Bola Ahmed Tinubu going into the litigations. Well, other activities to be undertaken in the pre-trial would be reviewed throughout the proceedings, and whether they're going to be admitted like that, or if there's an objection, or how to raise an objection to a document. These are the major issues that will be up for discussion, that will be up for the proceedings that we're expecting to commence later today. But there's another twist on all of this, and that's the fact that the People's Democratic Party, in a move that will likely excite a whole lot of Nigerians, especially the critics of INEC, as far as the conduct of that election is concerned and their declaration of Tinubu as president-elect, Atiku and the PDP have demanded that they test live. Now, to achieve this, Atiku has filed an application for an order to allow the live coverage of the daily court proceedings. Now, we've gathered, of course, from information obtained from Chris Uche, a senior advocate of Nigeria and a part of the legal team of Atiku Abubakar, who specifically said that they have applied for an order directing the court registry and the parties on the modalities for the PDP and Mr. Atiku, of course. Nigerians across the 36 states of the Federation, as well as the international community, are all interested in this case. And the motion, of course, read in part, with the huge and tremendous technological advances and development in Nigeria and beyond, including the current trend by the court towards embracing electronic procedures, virtual hearing, and electronic filing, a departure from the rules to allow a regulated televising of these proceedings in this matter, in consonance with the maxim that justice must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. An interesting presidential elections petitions tribunal being beamed and televised live for the rest of the country and by extension the rest of the world to see. I think the concerns raised here by the PDP, to an extent that it will have to file a motion in this regard, is coming on the back of claims that the party has made that the APC is trying to truncate the court's proceedings, and they have raised an alert in this regard. Well, this formed part of the submissions made in a press conference yesterday, which was presided over by the National Publicity Secretary of the PDP, Debo Ologunagba, who claimed that the alert said we need a change in this regard. Let's get to take a listen to Debo Ologunagba speaking yesterday.
On the public anxiety over alleged plots by the APC to influence the outcome, he has invited you this afternoon to alert Nigerians and the international community of the shocking revelations, reports, and allegations of plots by the All Progressive Congress APC to influence the outcome of the presidential election petition currently pending before the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. The PDP also alerts of recent intimidation, harassment, threats, and vicious attack by APC leaders against Nigerian youths and eminent Nigerian personalities for speaking out against APC's planned move to install a government that does not enjoy the mandate of Nigerians and our democratic institutions, including the judiciary, stems from APC's apprehension. Given the weight of evidence against it, as well as the continuing refusal by majority of Nigerians to accept the outcome of the flawed presidential election. There are apprehensions in the public space having regards to the reputation of certain individuals within the highest level of the APC who have demonstrated capacity and proclivity to compromise democratic institutions in our country. It will be recalled that on Friday, May 5, 2023, our party raised alarm over the massively condemned comments by the APC presidential candidate Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the commissioning of some judiciary projects in Port Harcourt, River State, where by certain APC leaders to compromise the judiciary with heavy financial inducement and to orchestrate trump up allegations of impropriety against judicial officers. The PDP calls on the APC and its leader already in the public domain. Further to this provocative result by the APC and its leaders to threaten Nigerians with treason for speaking out against the manipulations of our democratic processes by the APC. For emphasis, majority of Nigerians are insisting on the review of the February 25, 2023 presidential election because it was marred by widespread manipulations, open alteration of genuine results from the polling units, the Electoral Act 2022, as well as INEC manual and guideline by INEC itself in its declaration of a winner of the election. The bizarre response by INEC, which is an umpire that ought to be independent, to the petition of the PDP and our candidate Atiku Abubakar, requesting for the dismissal of our petition, is further evidence of the complicity, corruption, and compromise of INEC by the APC. I need to emphasize here, INEC in its response to our petition actually went to the fray as it's like akin to a football match where a referee has blown a penalty and is subject to a VAR review, and the referee is saying, don't mind the people complaining of the electoral process. The APC and INEC are therefore advised to halt further steps to hinder the ability of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal to dispense justice in the matter in accordance with the law. The PDP therefore restates its call on the judiciary to resist and insulate itself from the alleged and reported antics of the APC in the discharge of its constitutional duties as independent and impartial arbiter in the pending petition before the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. It is imperative to say that the reckless violation by INEC of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 1999 grave consequences to our country and political stability as a country. The only way to guarantee peace, unity, and stability of our nation is to uphold the will of the people as expressed at the polling units in the February 25, 2023 presidential election. And the PDP is confident in the ability of the judiciary to discharge its constitutional duties in this regard independently. I thank you very much for listening. God bless Nigeria.
Well, that's the PDP National Publicity Secretary, Debo Ologunagba, addressing the press yesterday after raising an alarm about an alleged onslaught planned by the APC hierarchy and intricacies that they alleged has been deployed by the APC to truncate the democratic process in the country. In the words of Debo Ologunagba, he said it's an attack on persons who have actually spoken out, against the APC's apprehensions, given the weight of the evidence against it, as well as the continued refusal by majority of Nigerians to accept the outcome of what they called a flawed presidential election. And he said it's more alarming that the allegations are now in the public domain and in the public space. And so they feel the APC is trying to compromise the judiciary with alleged heavy financial inducement and orchestrate what they've called trumped-up allegations of it to come clean and address Nigerians and the world on these disturbing issues and allegations, as well as revelations, which are now out there in the public space. And they've said further to this is the proactive result by the APC and its leaders to threaten Nigerians with treason for speaking out against the manipulations of the nation's democratic process. It perhaps explains the decision why Mr. Atiku has decided to file that suit in court, demanding or requesting for televising the entire court proceedings, which would, of course, commence today. The motion, of course, reads in part with the huge and tremendous technological advances and developments in Nigeria, which is a departure from the rules to allow a regulated televising of the proceedings in this matter, is in consonance with the maxim that justice must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. Well, it will immediately raise questions about the provisions of the law in this regard, and if the law is actually silent on matters of this nature, or whether there are provisions that allows for beaming or televising court proceedings in the country. Is it unlawful to do so? Well, the APC has already begun dismissing most of those claims. They've also filed a counter application asking the court not to honor the PDP's request to have the process televised. And it would only raise the question, is there anything to hide? If the APC truly believes and feels that it did win the February 25 president being televised for the rest of the world to see, and INEC, on the other hand, that is expected to be a neutral party or a neutral factor in this election, cannot surely join the queue of those who have said, let's not televise this process, then it would only mean that maybe INEC does have, questions to answer, or they do have skeletons in their cupboard that they do not want to put out there in the open space. Now, we already know that there have been a lot of debates about the legality of the practice of the court without obtaining prior approval by the court. And we saw this kind of issues, of course, come to the front burners of legal discourse in Nigeria after we saw an incident some time ago in a federal high court in Uyo, precisely the Akpabio state's capital, where a journalist was actually ordered out of the courtroom because he was discovered to have been covering the proceedings discreetly from the comfort of his mobile phone, and it connected to the recording of the court's proceedings. And upon application for a certified true copy of the record of the proceedings that day, the record was not readily available, as at the time it was eventually provided. So there was a lot of suspicion on the accuracy of the record, and it led to the big debate about whether we should be or begin televising, court proceedings in the country. If you look closely at it, this should now be the norm. First off, that said, with the tremendous technological advances and developments in Nigeria and beyond, meaning they've taken into consideration that this is gradually becoming a standard in other countries. So why can't Nigeria follow suit, including, as they put it, the trend by the court towards embracing electronic procedures such as virtual hearing and electronic filing? Again, classics that obtain proceedings of the entire processes at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, because the fear on the part of most Nigerians is that, look, we already had an election that appears to have been flawed and tainted because INEC did not meet the expectation of both Nigerians. And the showdown that we saw at the National Coalition Center speaks volume. Well, at least we had the collation of the elections being televised, and Nigerians were left in awe around the drama that ensued at the Coalition Center, which eventually led to some of the opposition parties staging a walkout on the INEC chairman because of alleged discrepancies that they claim were being swept under the carpet by the national chairman. Yet, discrepancies and irregularities were still observed, so much so that they've been summed up to mean deliberate manipulation of the process in favor of a particular candidate, issues that we expect to crop up when the proceedings at the Presidential Election Tribunal gets into its heated stage. But right now, the major subject is around whether the process should be televised or not. And opinion is largely divided because there are some who have maintained if we have the process televised, it will lead to fairness and the credibility of the process, because being televised, and if we had issues where, party agents had drawn the attention of the electoral officers to irregularities that were witnessed in real time in some of the result sheets, or contravening the electoral acts and provisions around how decisions should be taken around the election, but all of this were bluffed off by the INEC national chairman, and he eventually went ahead to make the declaration of the APC candidate as the winner of the election. Would we see any difference or a shift in terms of the policy of handling the post-election litigation, controlled by the federal government. But in this case, we're talking about a different arm of government altogether. And does it explain why the PDP is, having really cold feet about the fact that they claim the APC is trying to truncate the process, and the APC itself already rushing to file a counter motion against the PDP's request to have these proceedings televised? What is the APC trying to hide? I mean, if the president himself has said he was going to bequeath to Nigerians a legacy where they claimed they had the elections conducted free, fair, and square, and opinions that had been, defended over time by the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, who was in Washington, they would have no concerns with having the proceedings being televised for the rest of the world to see a certain and a judge whether truly the APC had won that election on fair grounds. Well, these are the positions being put forward by those who support the claims by Atiku and the PDP that, look, let's have this process televised. But at best today, suits filed by the PDP to have the process televised is another matter ongoing that would also require a judgment. And should the PDP or even the Labour Party and the other parties who have supported the calls for a televised proceedings do get their way for an appeal of that decision, INEC, on the other hand, would be a surprise, we have to say, to many Nigerians if INEC decides to join the queue and say we cannot have this process televised, because it would mean compromising on their stance of neutrality and independency that they are expected to maintain throughout the electioneering period, which also includes post-election litigations, and it commences today. So it's a long way and a long shot from determining whether the PDP and Atiku's prayers would be granted to have the court proceedings televised, as they've said, is in consonance with the maxim that we can not only allow justice to be done, we must see it being done. And that's because in recent days, we've heard calls from different quarters urging Nigerians to accept the outcome to allowing a seamless transfer of power to President-elect Bola Tinubu, and have said they will not allow anything to deter the May 29 inauguration, and have reiterated government's position that aggrieved parties should go to court and respect the court proceedings. Claims that have been backed up by former head of state General Yakubu Gowon, retired, who in an event last week did say the losing parties at the election should all accept the outcome of the polls regardless which way it goes, whether in their favor or not. And if we have to just stomach whole line and sinker, whatever it is, the court proceedings, that justice was truly and indeed served. And the PDP has also factored in the fact that this is an election that was conducted for Nigerians and by Nigerians, meaning Nigerians are arguably the biggest stakeholders in this process. So why should they be cut off from the entire proceedings? Yes, the norm has always been that court proceedings are not televised, but this is a different case altogether. And the last time we had something of this nature dates back to the post panel led by Justice Chukwudi Oputa, which tried some Nigerians, including those with military backgrounds, on some of the activities that they were perceived to have carried out that broke the laws of the country, especially during the junta era. Some would argue that while that was a good step in the right direction, because for the first Nigerians answering to crimes that they were alleged to have invited to the Oputa panel, they were quizzed, questions were answered, questions were asked, of course, before the answers did come up. Allegations were thrown left, right, center, but just how many persons were convicted by the Oputa panel, let alone made to serve some kind of punishment? I mean, until today, an electric bomb explosion that led to the death of veteran journalist, the late Dele Giwa. No one knows about the true state of the death of the late MK Abiola in detention, or let alone the speculations around the true incident that led to the death of the late General Sani Abacha himself. What about the activities that characterized his military administration? spearheaded by his then CEO, the retired Major Hamza al-Mustafa, who is still walking free today, and as a matter of fact was a presidential candidate in the just concluded presidential election. So if we had a panel of that nature and the whole thing was televised for Nigerians and the rest of the world to see, and then at the end of the day, we had little or nothing to show what they have in having this process beamed live. But these are interesting times ahead indeed. It's just day one, by the way, as far as the commencement of the pre-hearing for the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal is concerned. It's left to be seen how far this will go. There's always been that clarion call for the Nigerian judiciary to fast-track most of its cases as against the norms and the standard we have over the years, where it seems court cases tend to drag longer than normal. The expectation is that this matter would be, addressed sooner than later. But yes, the big fix and the concern on the part of others as well is that we could have this case continue even after Bola Tinubu has been sworn in as president. So the likelihood here is that Tinubu will be president. The PEPT's decision is prone to being challenged at the Supreme Court. It perhaps explains why it has been allowed to start at the Court of Appeal stage, so that any of the candidates who are dissatisfied with the ruling of the PEPT would simply channel the grievances to the Court of Appeal instead of starting from the High Court. Now we know the PEPT is sitting in the Court of Appeal state at the federal, or rather at the Court of Appeal in Abuja. We expect that after judgment is given or verdict is pronounced on this matter, the candidates who are not happy with whatever outcome we would get at the end of the day would simply take their grievances to the Supreme Court, which is the apex court in the country. But again, we have to reiterate that we've seen firsthand and in real time where the rule of law was simply disregarded with reference to President Buhari's decision not to respect the first and second time of asking the redesigned Naira. It took a third time of asking before the president eventually burst and decided to comply with the court's ruling. So the fear on the part of most, especially the litigants, is in the event that you have a Tinubu as president already, when the PEPT gives its verdict on the outcome of the presidential election, should it favor the litigants, arbitration want to comply with the court's ruling that vacates its victory at the February 25 polls, and perhaps either calls for a rerun, a supplementary election, or simply any of the defeated candidates to be sworn in? Would he want to respect that decision? And that's the premise for which most have said it's not yet to who with them as well. But we have to go for a breather, yeah? And when we come back from this break, the second matter of the day is another expected inauguration, this time the legislative arm of a government. The expectation is that while the members-elect are all grappling and lobbying for who will take over the coveted position of Senate President, it appears some persons are already a step ahead of each other. And right now, the bell is only chiming for one man, and that's the former governor of Akpabio State, Senator Akpabio, who appears to have secured the backing of a good number of the members-elect. The projections and the much talk about the Senate presidency will form much of our deliberations again when we come back. Stay with us, Political Spectrum. We'll return.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on Free TV.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Welcome back and many thanks for staying on. You're still watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum Television with me, Raymond Ita. And a quick reminder of a major discussion this morning. The People's Democratic Party, PDP, as well as its presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar, have filed a suit at the Federal High Court demanding for a beaming and live televising of the court proceedings at the presidential election petition trial of the February 25 post that saw the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, declare Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC as president-elect and is due for inauguration come May 29. And while the commencement of the pre-hearing is slated for today, the PDP has said for fairness and credibility of the process itself, it has to be televised live for the benefit of the Nigerian people, whom they maintain are an important stakeholder in the electioneering process. Well, we come to the 10th National Assembly and the plans for their own inauguration come June 5 and the heated race for who will become Senate presidency. But before we touch on that, let's just quickly drop in on this news around the judges who are expected to sit at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, which of course starts today. The chairman of the tribunal, of course, is Justice Samani, who has urged parties before the courts to refrain from making what he called sensational comments that could cause unrest in the country. And he has urged all parties that swiftly, and here's what he had to say in the statement, and some excerpts from it says, "I want to appeal to everyone in this matter not to make sensational comments that could set the country on fire. We on our part too will ensure that justice is given to the one who deserves it." Well, these are interesting and bold claims to make by the judiciary, and perhaps give credence to the backing or the arguments of those who have said the judiciary is the last hope of the common man. But how true would they live up to this billing and expectations is what most Nigerians will be watching out for as the processes commence, of course, today. But as far as we know it, I already buttressed on this line of argument earlier on. Court proceedings will take place by the time the next hearing, of course, does come around. So the processes we're looking forward today will be filing of documents, how the witnesses will be called, what time each of the witnesses will be allotted, how the councils will likely present their cases, and what have you. And not forgetting that we're having, you know, 3 parties challenge the outcome of this election, including the PDP, the Labour Party, as well as the NNPP. Most persons do not know that. They may not be as, you know, crazy about it when we talk about craziness in terms of the level of followership that they have attached to the entire proceedings, except for 1 or 2 statements from the party's quarters. It looks like it's the PDP and the Labour Party who have really been at the forefront of championing the battle to reclaim mandates that they feel they have lost at the elections. Well, interesting times ahead indeed, we'll maintain. But let's turn our sights now from the executive to the legislative arm. And the battle for the Senate presidency continues. We'll come to that later, but the National Working Committee of the APC is expected to meet later today and for the opportune time, hopefully take a decision on where they expect to zone the principal positions in the National Assembly too. Well, we know the on where to zone the Senate presidency or the speakership positions too. And that's because the chairman of the party, Senator Abdullahi Adamu, said the input of President-elect Bola Tinubu will also be welcome. And since he was on a 2-day working visit to Rivers State in Port Harcourt, as at the time the meeting was taking place, so later today we'll hear a meeting of the National Caucus of the party, that's the National Working Committee, is expected to take place in Abuja today to ratify the zones that the Leadership Assembly of the 10th National Assembly will come from, of course. And it is expected that the crucial meeting also has plans to have a consensus, candidates around the choice of candidates that have sprang up. In an interview with journalists yesterday, the National Publicity Secretary of the APC, Felix Morka, confirmed that the meeting would take place at the party's headquarters, but he refused to make available the full agenda, but only noted that the meeting will take critical decisions regarding some issues facing the party. But one of the journalists at that briefing did ask him if the National Assembly leadership is a matter of information on that for now. And he also said you can be assured that we shall brief the press after today's meeting. So we're expecting the APC to issue a statement on the expected meeting, which is coming up later. And we're told it will be a one-point agenda meeting. The chairman is expected, the chairman of the party that is expected to brief the committee on the outcome of the meeting that they held with the president-elect Bola Tinubu on Friday last week on the zoning of the National Assembly leadership, and also get the buy-in of the National Working Committee members to these arrangements. The NWC of the APC will also consider a date for the meeting with all the major aspirants who are jostling for the principal positions of the National Assembly, and also to ensure a rancor-free electioneering process in filing the leadership of the National Assembly position too. But we're getting feelers that they're all targeting a consensus candidate. And talk about a consensus candidate, one name is on the lips of many. Former commissioner, former two-term governor, one-time senator, and a minister in the Federal Republic who's now returning to the National Assembly at the 10th Assembly, expected to be inaugurated come June 5. Is Senator Akpabio, who has had the support of some of the leading aspirants for the coveted position. Governor David Mai of Ebonyi State, who will be joining the 10th Assembly in June, is one of those who has stood down formally in the race for the Senate presidency and has openly backed the candidacy of Senator Akpabio. So are two leading contenders from the north. Senator Gabriel Barral as well as Ali Ndume have been ever present in the National Assembly. They have also stood down on their ambitions and decided to support the candidacy of Senator Akpabio. Well, according to feelers, this merger has produced a backing of effect over the weekend, where we saw Governor David Mai in the company of Senator Akpabio as well as Senator Ali Ndume, all addressing the media and confirming that they have decided to stand down, their ambitions, and decided to support Senator Akpabio, whom they feel is the chosen one and the man who would rightly lead the 10th Assembly and is concerned. Well, over the weekend, there was also a luncheon that was attended by President-elect Bola Tinubu in company of the Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, and it's been purported that the President-elect has also endorsed Senator Akpabio for the role of Senate President. Let's take a listen to most of these developments, and we'll get our narrative straight and set when we come back. Stay with us.
Mr. President, come 29th of May, Tinubu, Mr. Speaker, our host governor, other governors, all protocols observed. Mr. President, this is your first outing as President-elect. Very soon, your next outing will be that of President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We felt well, Mr. President, tonight is for you, not for the senators. But let me recognize my dear brother, Senator Barrow Jibrin, who is accompanying me with other 41 senators to come and honor you in Rivers State and by implication, honor 41 senators elect and honor the governor. You have a jewel in your hand. For Mr. President, my brothers, my colleagues came late because they were sitting today, but they felt they must come in large numbers because you are taking your first step. These people are married to you for the next 4 years. They are the ones that are going to evaluate your policies. They are the ones that are going to advise on a daily basis. And they are the ones that are going to... Mr. President, you are a product of total nationalism. Standing before you here are senators from APC. Mr. President, we should have been 60, but we did not have enough aircrafts. So what the governor of Rivers has sent to us was just a 40-seater aircraft. But we have 109 senators, but at least 60 of us were supposed to be here tonight. So we had to get another aircraft. We shall discuss with the governor later. So we want to say congratulations to a political magician. We want to say congratulations to G. We also want to say that your election was not an election of APC. It was an election of a nationalist. The election of a man who has fought for democracy from the days of Nadeko, a man who has slept in prison for democracy to thrive. A man who also came around. And by the time you started in Lagos State, the comedian, I thought he was going to hit it. We had a place called Malako. As a law school student, you couldn't pass through that place. It was totally great. If there's anything no Nigerian can take away from you, it's the power of thinking. The power of thinking. Thinking that produces results. That was why we compared you with the speech of that young lady called Helen Keller, when she said, when the press asked her, what could be worse than being blind? And she answered, to have ambition in the person of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. For the governor of Rivers State, Nigeria is not through with you. We are very proud of you. I'm from Niger Delta. I grew up in Port Harcourt. I was a student in secondary school here, Federal Government College, Port Harcourt. I didn't want to say it, but let me say that I think you have performed more than any governor that has ever ruled in Niger Delta. And we have yourself. The sky is the limit. May God bless tonight, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
There are senators elect here.
Symposium held for the president-elect Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu after the conclusion crucial and pivotal role in his emergence as president-elect, because apparently it's paid to the PDP's presidential candidate's ambition at the just concluded presidential post. However, we know the PDP had faulted the visit of Tinubu to Rivers, and the rhetoric they claimed has been pushed around by Tinubu and Wike to try to, influence the judiciary in the court proceedings that are expected to follow the commencement of the PEPT proceedings later today. The PDP claims that it was the Labour Party who actually won in Rivers State and not the All Progressives, who backed his ambition for Senate presidency, all queued up behind him. Not the entirety of the 65 senators, we're told, who have all merged in from the Jibril Barao camp to support him, purportedly saying that Jibril Barao has now been earmarked for the position of Deputy Senate President. Well, we know the mergers and following the expiration of his tenure as governor of Ebonyi in the 10th Assembly, also stepping down and giving his support to Senator Gosio Akpabio. Let's take another listen, and when we come back, continuation on the deliberations.
My brother came on consultation with me But yesterday, I saw the president-elect on his invitation, and he told me that he's already committed, and he said, please don't run. And I accepted, and I stepped down for my brother, Senator Akpabio.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Saying that Senator Akpabio is not the consensus candidate?
Yeah, that's it.
So
I also stepped down for him as the deputy Senate president. So I stepped down to for two of them.
Okay, now, we don't know if you share the same information with him. He's also in the race.
Please, come and answer.
Well, thank you very much.
Have you stepped down, sir?
Not only stepping down. As you can see, I'm leading the campaign for Akpabio because he is the president's preferred candidate, and we have to put the interests of the country, the party, above any other interest. Akpabio is the candidate.
Be careful, senior colleague. As well as you say, I should lead this campaign.
So you can see how popular he is.
You step down. How did you feel? You step down for also Barao.
Not only him. We are going on a combined ticket. That is Akpabio Barao ticket for the 10th Senate. Akpabio.
How do you feel about this? Congratulations. We are meeting after this announcement.
I give all glory to Almighty God, and I've always said, Inshallah, the will of God will be done in Nigeria.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Move on.
Okay, can we hear from Senator
Yes. 1 minute. Well, I stand by all what they said. Thank you very much.
Well, interesting times ahead indeed for the principal positions in the National Assembly is concerned, and we've heard from arguably the Senate presidency has just spoken or heard from others speak. Senator Akpabio, Devamai, Jibril Barao, Alin Dume, there was of course, the president-elect at the other point, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and several of the other senators who have all decided to throw their weight and support behind the candidacy of Senator Akpabio. Does it mean that they may already have adopted a consensus candidate for the 10th Assembly going forward? We could hear ahead the campaign for an Akpabio Senate presidency. And Devamai as well also confirmed that he met with the president-elect yesterday, and he was told that he favors the choice of Senator Akpabio, and that's why they've all decided to stand down for him. Well, what does this mean? This program last week to x-ray the resume of the interested candidates for this position, most of them from the north, the southeast, and from the south-south as well. Well, the two leading figures from the north have now stepped down for Akpabio. That's Alin Dume and Jibril Barao. And you have Devamai also stepping down, much as was expected. But he's been one of the leading figures in the APC in the last 8 years as governor of Ebonyi State. Don't forget, he equally threw his heart into the ring for the presidential elections, where he stood down for Asiwaju Tinubu himself. Here is him again, stepping down. The lobbying is gradually taking shape, and it's only a matter of the remainder of the 109 members who make up the Senate to agree to all of this. But there's and complaints as well from some quarters. We hear that there's been discontent who claim that they've been schemed out of things as far as the position of the Senate presidency is concerned. Or as a matter of fact, the principal positions in the National Assembly, that Senator Akpabio is the mooted consensus candidate for the position of Senate presidency, then it means the deputy Senate presidency would of course go to the north. And it's looking likely, following this merger, that it could be Senator Jibril Barao emerging as the deputy Senate president. What does that now mean for the Green Chamber of the National Assembly, and that's the House of Representatives? It would also mean that the position of Speaker would be zoned to the north, while the South is expected to produce the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives. If we have to judge by the politicking that we've witnessed, it would not be a surprise to many if the APC decides to zone the Deputy Speakership position to the Southeast. Yes, that's because the Igbos offend marginalization in the scheme of things. And this was the argument the likes of Senate Chief Whip Ojus Okalu put forward when he first declared his ambition to run for Senate President. He said the Igbos should be factored in because as one of the leading regions or tribe in the country, they do not have the presidential or the vice presidential position. So maybe giving them that of the Senate would suffice. But it's looking very likely that that ambition will be swept under the carpet. They can only make do with the positions in the House of Representatives, and that's likely to be the deputy speakership position. While the North Central has been agitating for its course to be also factored into the scheme of things, and have said the decision of the National Working Committee of the APC to call for a meeting later today, as confirmed by Felix Morka, the National Publicity Secretary of the APC. More feelers from there suggest the principal discussion for today may likely be the zoning of the speakership position, and also the concerns raised by the Deputy National Chairman of the party, North, who had actually said the National Chairman of the party, Adamu Abdullahi, should step down because he had failed to convene a meeting of the NWC before now, and also said he has to defend allegations of financial impropriety that has been leveled against him by some of the bigwigs within the APC. So far so good. No official position taken just yet, except from the feelers we've seen and gotten from some of the leading figures within the APC. But the body language is looking pretty clear that Senator Akpabio may just be the favored one for the role of Senate President. Again, some information for you as far as the 10th National Assembly is concerned. We have it in good authority that all is now set for the induction of the senators-elect and members-elect of the 10th National Assembly. This information was confirmed by the clerk to the National Assembly, Malam Sani Magaji Tambuwal, who gave the indication after the inspection of the venues for the training and hotel accommodation for the lawmakers. Well, he expressed satisfaction with the level of preparation after the inspection of the training venues and the hotels designated for their accommodation. And from the information we have, the lawmakers have been divided into two batches ahead of the induction, which is coming up. The first batch would happen between May 7. It actually was supposed to commence yesterday, but I think yesterday's processes were more or less for the inspection of the venues that would be used for this induction. But we know the full processes would commence later today for the first batch and would run until May 13, while the second batch is to the National Assembly precedes the formal inauguration, which we are told would happen on June 5. Make that around 6 days after the inauguration of the president-elect. So after the election comes governance, everyone agrees, and the process towards that is already building up. Nigerians are monitoring this and anticipating a seamless transfer of power democratically, as has been the process since 1999 up until date. But as we know it, the icing on the cake arguably has to be the proceedings at the presidential election petitions tribe to be televised. Would those prayers be granted? Well, time will definitely tell. But that's how much we can go on Political Spectrum for today. Many thanks indeed for joining us, but do well to keep a date with us as well tomorrow. And hopefully we should have some information for you from the aftermath of the APC National Working Committee meeting slated for today. And hopefully we should have some information tomorrow as to the pictures that we're hoping to get and the projections as to who would likely emerge the Senate President or the Speaker of the House of Representatives going forward. We'll bring you up to speed with that as well, but that's the much we can take on Political Spectrum for today. Thanks indeed for joining us. Blood and the Cam is up next with the latest from the world of